Today we are going to cover Genesis chapter 21, verse 8 through 21. Let these words sink deep in our soul. So let us begin, shall we? The child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast on the day that Isaac was weaned. But Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham, playing with her son Isaac. So she said to Abraham, "Cast out this slave woman with her son, for the son of this slave woman shall not inherit along with my son Isaac." The matter was very distressing to Abraham on account of his son. But God said to Abraham, "Do not be distressed because of the boy and because of your slave woman. Whatever Sarah says to you, do as she tells you. For it is through Isaac that offspring shall be named for you. As for the son of the slave woman, I will make a nation of him also, because he is your offspring." So Abraham rose early in the morning and took bread and a skin of water and gave it to Hagar, putting it on her shoulder along with the child, and sent her away. And she departed, wandered about in the wilderness of Beersheba. When the water of the skin was gone, she cast the child under one of those bushes. Then she went and sat down opposite him, a good way off, about the distance of a bowshot. For she said, "Do not let me look on the death of the child." And as she sat opposite him, she lifted up her voice and wept. And God heard the voice of the boy, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, "What troubles you, Hagar? Do not be afraid, for God has heard the voice of the boy where he is. Come, lift up the boy and hold him fast with your hand, for I will make a great nation of him." Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. She went and filled the skin with water and gave the boy a drink. God was with the boy, and he grew up. He lived in the wilderness and became an expert with the bow. He lived in the wilderness of Prairie, and his mother got a wife for him from the land of Egypt. These are the words of God.
Thanks be to God. The story from Genesis this morning is part of a much longer story. Abraham had heard the voice of God, and God had said, "Get up and move to a land that I will show you." And so Abraham had packed up everything, packed up his wife, packed up his nephew, packed up his sheep and his goats and all the stuff that goes along with that, and had started out and had wandered around going where God had told him to go. And he had a lot of adventures while he was out in the wilderness. But the main adventure that he had was that he entered into covenant with God. There are at least 3 times that there is a story in Genesis where God comes to Abraham and says, I will enter into covenant with you, and you will have a son. Now, one of those times when God was making this covenant, Sarah had overheard this covenant being made. Because that was the first time that God said, and the covenant will come through Sarah. The son who will be your descendant will be Sarah's son. And Sarah had heard this, and by that time she was 75 plus, and as the Bible so delicately puts it, had ceased to be in the way of women, which is the polite way to put it, of course. And so she had snickered under her breath, yeah, right, gonna have a baby. That's going to happen. And lo and behold, God was faithful to the covenant. Now the problem was that between the time that God made the covenant and God fulfilled the covenant was a whole lot of years. And after a while, it doesn't say whether or not Abraham lost faith or whether Abraham was worried, but Sarah got worried. Sarah got worried, and so she took one of her slave girls, a slave woman from Egypt named Hagar. And again, the Bible cleans all this stuff up, says, and she gave her to Abraham as a wife. And sure enough, Hagar gets pregnant and bears a son. And the son's name is Ishmael. Now, if you're reading Genesis very closely, one of the things you note is that when Ishmael was born, Abraham was 86 years old. By the time we get to chapter 21, which is when Isaac is finally born to Sarah, Abraham is 100 years old, which means by this time Ishmael is 14 years old, more or less. And so here comes this story, and it's a story that Sarah looks at the 2 children playing. Now, we already have a problem with that because in those days, 14-year-old was not considered a child anymore. 14-year-old was basically an adult. And by 15 or 16, you were moving into the adult world with adult responsibilities. So to refer as a 14-year-old as a child, we've already got, a little hiccup going here. Now, the writer of Genesis didn't care how old Ishmael was. That was not his point. You look at this story about Hagar being cast out, and there's practically nothing right about it. There's practically nothing right. First of all, the whole thing starts with an incredibly wrong presupposition. And that presupposition is slavery. Abraham and Sarah owned slaves. Now, if you're a modern Jew in the 21st century, that is an embarrassment. Because owning slaves is not good. There's practically nothing good in this story. But owning slaves is not good. Now, we know how that feels. We've just celebrated July the 4th. And somewhere, if you're on Twitter with National Public Radio, they tweeted the entire Declaration of Independence, 140 characters at the time. It took a while. But there are those magnificent words. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, among which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And we cheer those words and we say, yes, that is who we are. That is what we believe. And we cheer Thomas Jefferson for having written them. Although we're like the descendants of Abraham, it's like, oh, Jefferson, really? Because Jefferson, who penned these magnificent words about all men being equal and all men being free, owned slaves. And we twitch when we talk about our founding fathers. A whole lot of our founding fathers owned slaves. And they didn't do anything about it in 1776. It took almost another century before anybody got around to righting that wrong. And so when we read these words, we're going, Jefferson, what were you thinking? Now, Jefferson always said he was going to free his slaves. And evidently he had good intentions. He was going to free his slaves, but somehow he never got around to it. Slavery was wrong in 1776. Slavery was wrong in Abraham's day. And when we read this story, there's practically nothing right about it. There's nothing right about the fact that you hand a slave woman over to somebody else as a wife in order to bear a son. Nothing good about that. Not only that, but if you go back and read earlier in Genesis, it actually says that Sarah took the son herself. There's nothing good about that. There's practically nothing good in this story that we read this morning. Now, Sarah has had her own baby, has had Isaac. And if you and I want to deal literally in terms of ages, okay, we may have a 14-year-old playing with an infant. And that might cause Sarah a little bit of worry. I don't know about you. Now, my brother has children. And when the first one was born, the pastor of the Methodist church, who went to see them in the hospital, laughed. He said, yes, I can remember when I went to meet Lawson. I came in the door and I had to wash my hands. And he said, I actually felt like they didn't make me put a mask on before I could hold that baby. And maybe some of you remember when you had your first child, you sterilized everything in sight, didn't you? That same pastor can remember when my second nephew was born. He said, yeah, I walked in the hospital and they said, here. But you know, that first child, you really have to be careful about that. And parents tend to be real careful. Well, wait a minute. Have you washed your hands? Do you have a cold? Are you infectious? Have you got all your shots? How long has it been since you were outside? Have you been in any country that has been the Zika virus? You know, new parents with the firstborn, they're pretty excitable. And maybe Sarah was a little excitable at this point, and she's looking at a 14-year-old playing with an infant and is a little tense. Maybe. But her solution to this is not right. And certainly the biblical writer thinks there was another motivation, because what she says to Abraham is, send that slave woman and her son out of here, because that's not where the covenant is going to be met. The covenant is going to be met in my child. Well, there's nothing good about that. Although, you kind of wonder if maybe the writer of Genesis at least has a sneaking sympathy with Sarah. I don't know if you noticed when Mai was reading, Ishmael's name is not mentioned at any point in that story. And when you do not name someone, you are hiding their identity. And to hide someone's identity is to deny that they are made in the very image of God, who has a name and has given us names. There's practically nothing right about this story. There's certainly not anything right about Abraham's solution to it. He consults with God because he's upset. And if you're reading the scripture carefully, it says he was distressed because of his son. And God comes along right behind that in that same sentence that says, do not be distressed because of your son and the slave woman. Abraham is only concerned about his son, but God is concerned with both the child and the mother. Anybody who's ever dealt with troubled children knows that you've also got to work with mom. It does no good just to work with the child. You've got to get the home involved as well. And God is seeing both the child and the mother. And Abraham then gives her food, a skin of water, and we can't quite tell if he puts the child on her shoulder, although at 14 years old, I'm kind of thinking probably not. And away they go. And sure enough, you wander around the wilderness long enough, the water runs out. And Hagar's solution to that is also not right. There's practically nothing right in this story. Because Hagar's solution is to place, toss, whatever your translation says, the child under a bush, presumably for shade, and then she walks away. Well, now I don't know about you, but even when I was 14 years old, if I was feeling bad, I didn't want Mom to walk away. I wanted her to hold my hand. And that's what parents are supposed to do. Not all of them do. Hagar being one of them. She walks off. And she doesn't walk just a short distance. The Bible is specific. She walks off a good distance, as far as a bow shot. Now, anybody who's ever actually, able to use archery knows that's a long way. In other words, she's not going to be able to hear him cry. But God hears. There is practically nothing right about this story. Except God. There is practically nothing right in this story except God. And it is God who is concerned about slaves. And it is God who is concerned both with child and with mother. And it is God who is going to keep the covenant, yes, with Isaac. But as it turns out, he's also going to keep covenant with Ishmael, who will grow up and will have an entire nation named after him. Now, the problem with reading the Bible is that sometimes we see ourselves. Last week in confirmation class, we had all kinds of things. We were talking about the Bible, and I pulled out a mirror, and I said, so, how is the Bible like the mirror? In the confirmation class, I said, well, sometimes we see ourselves in the Bible. I said, now, when you look in the mirror, do you always like what you see? No. No, we don't always like what we see. We don't always like what we see when we see ourselves in the Bible either. We see ourselves in the Bible. We know somebody who's like that in the Bible. We read the Bible and we think, wait a minute, that's my family. Biblical writers did not kid themselves. They did not kid themselves that Abraham was wrapped up in a system of slavery. We don't kid ourselves about our founding fathers. We know who they were. But the biblical writers almost always write that practically nothing is right in any of the stories except God. Only God is right. Only God does the right thing. Only God is good. We're talking about Abraham. We call ourselves the children of Abraham, for heaven's sake. We are the people of the book, and it starts with Abraham. But when the Bible talks about people never get it quite right. Even the man of faith, Abraham himself. This is a man of faith. Paul holds him up to say, Abraham's faith was sufficient. And we get this story about Hagar and Ishmael in the back of our minds says, now sufficient for what? We don't get it right. We are the people of the Bible. This is our story retelling, and we just don't get it right. We keep trying. We keep plugging away. Sometimes we think, oh, we're pretty good people. You know, we mow the lawn. We make sure the dog doesn't go into our neighbor's yard. You know, we don't hurt anybody. We stop at most of the stop signs. We pay our taxes. You know, we're pretty good people. And the Bible looks at somebody like Abraham who had faith and said, you know what? Even Abraham doesn't get it right. Nobody gets it right. Only God. And you and I join ourselves to that family. You and I join ourselves to the family of Abraham. You and I join ourselves into the people of faith because we understand that God uses us even when we don't get it right, because God always does. Amen. The junior high mission trip is going to have a great time, and they're going to do great work. Are they going to get it all right? Nope. But God will. And we're going to start Vacation Bible School tonight. And we're going to sing, and we're going to do crafts, and we're going to do science, and we're going to tell stories, and we're going to snack. And are we going to get it all right? No. But God will. When we talk about our story, when we talk about the stories of faith, there's practically nothing right. Except God. And that's who we belong to.
Amen.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.